Good afternoon and welcome to today's Ask the Gardener on, once again, unfortunately, a very, very wet and miserable Friday. Not really a day to be out in the garden, but maybe to be doing some armchair and internet gardening. So if you've got a question for me, do get it in the comments. I'll be chatting with Colman again in a while. We'll be chatting about how to grow tomato plants and the best things to be doing now with tomato plants. I have a lot of questions to get to first. I'm just going to get straight to them. There's a few which I didn't get to last week, and one of them, I'll find it here now, one sec, from Maureen Murta. Where is it gone? Maureen's asking about a flowering cherry blossom which she has, Prunus Royal Burgundy, and the leaves and the new shoots are being eaten. I can't see what's eating it. It looks like black poo. It's soft. What can I spray on it? So I'm just going to show you a picture because she sent a picture in as well. So I'll show you a picture of it. And what that is, Maureen, from what I can make out, is black fly. It's a black aphid. So I'd be slow enough to spray anything on that. I would actually just in the first instance prune off any infected shoots like that, and even with a hose pipe go and physically spray the black fly off it and they'll come off easy enough. It's much easier to do that than actually, much better to do that than actually use any chemical on it. So you should find, Maureen, these aphids, they're sap suckers, so they feed on the leaf and the veins of the underside of the leaf, and they cause the leaf to constrict like that. But they will go very much for the kind of soft, new, vulnerable growth. So I would say, as I say, in the first instance, just prune them off, just cut them off. Now, there's another few questions there which have come in, and there's one here from, where is it gone? Bear with me. And Sheehan, Peter. There it is. Peter, have you any cure for black spot on roses? And that's one that's going to be asked a lot, I think, particularly with the weather at the moment. Black spotted roses is a fungal infection which affects roses. It's much better, in my experience, I put a picture up there of just what black spot looks like, but it's much better in my experience to try and prevent roses getting fungal problems such as black spot in the first place, as opposed to trying to fix it. So how you do that is, again, what we call cultural control, which is good plant hygiene. So always prune the rose bush to a good open centre, so there's good air circulation through the less ideal conditions for the development of fungal infections like black spot, rust, any of these things. What you could do is some copper sulfate in water at this stage. It's a bit like ourselves, actually. When you're treating an infection in a plant, first of all, remove as much of the infection as possible. Create the ideal conditions first, then remove as much of the infection by pruning it off, then treat the infection. In this case, I'd look at something like copper sulfate. And finally, just feed it. Feed the plant to keep it good and strong and to increase its own immunity. Feed it in the first instance by just improving the soil, some good broken down compost, good organic material. You could then add maybe the nature safe liquid seaweed feed to it, which is the seaweed cold pressed from the Galway coast. It's sustainably harvested seaweed, which is obviously very important, and I do find that a good feed for overall plant health. So you could try that. Alison, hi Peter, I have a Clematis that I planted last year. It had a great show of flowers last month, but now it's dying back and the leaves and the stems are turning brown. Is it possible from all the rain or something else? I'm having a look. The leaves and the stems are turning. Yeah, Alison, I think, Alison, that very possibly the problem here is the amount of rain we're having. You planted it last year, so it's only a year old. I wouldn't be too worried about it, but it's certainly not drought, which it could have been last year. It's still a relatively new plant. It's done its flowering. I think it probably is just too much rain. What I would say to you is cut it back quite hard, and again give it a plant feed. A good quality tomato food is what I'd use there to drive it on, high in phosphorus, high in potassium, and give it that to kind of replenish it after it's given all its energy to the flowers. I would say hopefully that will help you, Alison, but I think a lot of problems at the moment are being caused by the excess rain. Now, question here. Amy, what fertiliser is best to use to feed a 1-year-old laurel hedge? Well, Amy, there's loads of them out there. Really, what you want, well, if the laurel hedge needs feeding in the first place, which it may not because they are pretty tough plants, But in the first instance, again, just improve the soil. So good organic material. By feeding the soil, you're getting the magic going in the root zone. And when I say feed it, I'm really just talking about what a lot of us might call waste. So it's composted garden and food waste. You compost that and add it to the soil, and it really is the best that you can do. But failing that, my go-to one, which I mentioned earlier, have it there. I do have it there. Yeah, it's if I'll hold it up to the camera so you'll see it. It's widely available. It's the Irish one. It's nature safe Atlantic seaweed. Brilliant liquid plant feed to add to anything. So you could try that, Amy, on your laurel and see how you get on. Just going through another couple that came in there. Anne-Marie O'Regan is asking me, can you plant bulbs now? Well, Anne-Marie, you can and you can't. Well, you can't really, I would say. I was going to say you can and you can't because there are some of the summer bulbs that you could be planting now, but it's too late really for them. But if you want a display like this, you know, the beautiful spring display of tulips and all the mixed bulbs, you can't plant them now, but you can pre-order them now for autumn delivery. And it's a wise thing to do because by pre-ordering bulbs, you'll get your delivery then during September, October. We do an awful lot of bulbs here in the Irish Gardener, so you can order them from us. We'll deliver them to you then in September, October at the right time for planting. There are your things like your daffodils, your muscari, your hyacinths, tulips, fritillarias, all these things. No planting them now, it's too early, but order them now and you'll plant them then in the autumn. Okay, see another few questions coming in there. Thanks for the advice, you're very welcome. Colette Higgins is asking, this is one last week that I didn't get to. Peter, I have 2 hydrangeas in pots for a few years. One is doing great. The other is in a bigger pot but struggling this year. See last year and this year's photos. Now guys, wait till you see the photos. Just wait till you see these. Last year, Colette's hydrangeas looked like this, if I can find the photograph. I can't, unfortunately, find last year's photograph, but I can find this year's photograph. And you can see one of them is thriving, good, full of green leaves, and the other not so good. It's again, I would think, Colette, looking at those pots, I don't think there's drainage holes in those pots. And I think one of them has just got waterlogged. It looks to me like it's been far too wet for it. I might be wrong, but I think that's what it is. The other one may have drainage holes or maybe just got lucky it didn't get waterlogged. But I think certainly the one that's damaged, it does look waterlogged. And I've just found the picture that you sent in of how they looked last year, and look at this, guys. That's some difference, isn't it? Fabulous last year and desperate now this year. A lot more questions coming in there. Keep them coming. I want to go over there to Kildare to have a quick chat with Colman if he's with us, and Colman wants to talk to us, I know, amongst other things, about tomato plants. So Colman, I'll just add you here now. How are you?
Good man, Peter. How are we?
I'm good. I'm going to turn you up there. Maybe you might stand or get a bit closer to the mic, could you? Yeah, I can hear you now. Hopefully everyone else can hear you.
Right, perfect job. I'm just going to say, I'm allowed to say this, Peter didn't say I could or I couldn't. Amazon #1 bestseller.
Come on.
The best thing that ever happened, I don't care.
I saw that during the week. Congratulations. And for those who don't know, Colman's book is out. You plug it. You, Colman, tell me the name, but tell everyone what it's about, and tell it about the Amazon bestsellers.
It took me 2.5 years to write it. For people that know me, maybe that long, maybe further beyond that. I'm dyslexic. I don't like even sitting down for too long. About people getting back to single ingredient foods, either growing your own or buying it, or certainly adding it to your diet. Available on Amazon, available on my website. And literally, that's just as much I want to plug it. Why? Because I'm going to give you as much free information as I possibly can. We're going to talk about tomatoes, which are an organic fitness food. And I'm doing a grow your own course tomorrow. If anyone is interested in that, I'm most certainly hit you up. There's one space available left. And then it's on Facebook. I'm going directly over to the likes of the tomato, just out here. Because you can grow tomatoes in Ireland, but they have to be grown, I suppose, inside in either a warm windowsill or like of that. Look at this. This is my tomato plant. So right now, there's a couple of different side shoots. What we're going to do is most certainly remove these side shoots. Let's bring this camera a little bit closer. So what you want is always one main leader. As a result of that, what you're going to get is something that's going to go tall, strong, and produce more flowers. The more flowers, literally, the more fruit you're going to have. So these side shoots have to be removed. A lot of people say, oh my God, Paul, yes, we can flower out here. flowers starting to emerge there, but aren't they going to be tomatoes? Yes, they are, but if you leave it, you have those numerous side shoots. What ends up happening is you're going to have, I suppose, it turn into a jungle, and you don't want that. So we want one main leader going up from the top, so that inevitably means that you have to remove the side shoots. And you do that is simply bending one way, and bending back the other, and it snaps directly off. Before we go any further than that, yes, that actually has and will produce the likes of another tomato plant if you want to put it in a separate pot. So that's a way of, I suppose, duplicating what plants you do currently have from the one you have here in front of you. So that can go in separately. I'll save that and use that for tomorrow's demonstration purposes in class. So again, you have to keep that main leader stem. You bend one way, you bend back the other, and keep doing that until it continues to, I suppose, snap off. Because if you tear off just one way, what ends up happening is you can literally tear and open up a massive wound. When you have a wound in the likes of a plant, what ends up happening is you can inevitably have much more likely to get pests and diseases, just like you would. If you have an open wound or a cut, it's something you don't want to have, minimize anyway, especially with your tomato plants, because they are susceptible to, I suppose, some diseases. So again, on every one of these wounds, we're going to do this a little bit closer to something we see. So we'll turn this pot around, and in this plant here, at every joint you're going to have a leaflet, as I like to call, and at every leaflet it's similar to the likes of an elbow. So an elbow where you have the likes of your leaflet, which is your hand, and at every joint, just as we have here, you have a side shoot. And this is the side shoot you're looking to remove. So you can see clearly here, we have the likes of that leaflet coming out here. There's a tiny little side shoot that we're going to remove here right now. So again, it's quite small at this moment in time, but you still remove it now, because now once we do that, bend it one way, bend it the other, snap straight off. Tiny little bit of a side shoot starting off there now. The first ones were quite large, and what you want to do is you go through every one of the, I suppose, leaflets that you have coming up there on the likes of your plant, so you can remove those, and what ends up happening is all the energy is sent into the likes of the main leader. So it's going to grow taller, it's going to produce more flowers, and everybody's going to produce more fruit for yourself. That's what you can do every way, all the way to the top. There's your next leaflet, and your likes your back this way to see it. There's your leaflet. Just remove that side shoot. Next one we come up, the main leader. There's your side shoot. There's your main leaflet. And your side shoot is just in here, and every one of those elbows. Twist it one way, twist it back the other, pop straight off. This was nearly, that's as easy. Go for the top one. That's right. As easy as it is to remove the likes of your side shoot. If you don't do that, then you're taking away a lot of the energy that will end up with more fruit. So you want to do this as soon as you possibly can. And if your plant is starting to lean over and get too tall for it, what you want to do is put yourself a stick or a bamboo. If you want to spend money, I always recommend the free things to people. Put a stick, pop it in there, and tie it with soft twine around it, most certainly supporting it so that it can, I suppose, produce more flowers than end up with more fruit in itself. And tomatoes are a natural mood improver, and they're coming into season officially this week in Ireland. So if you're not growing your own, most certainly go to your country market or call me and I'll hook you up with some organic tomatoes, most certainly from the Kildare area.
And I think Colman, that the best of all grow your own fruit and veg for me is tomatoes. And for anyone who hasn't done it, like eating a homegrown tomato, it's true with all fruits and veg, but a homegrown tomato versus a shop bought one, they're just two different products, aren't they? They really are just two different things, a shop bought tomato versus a homegrown. The staking, anything else at the moment, Colman? Two things I wanted you to show us, if you wouldn't mind. When you've pruned the side shoots off, you might show people exactly where the flowers are left and where the new fruits are going to come from on the plant that remains. And the other thing is, with all the rain we're having at the moment, you might give a few tips to people. On staking, I understand you've done that, that's great. But also anything else that people should be, like obviously this kind of very wet weather is ideal conditions for the development of blight and things like that. So is there anything people should be looking at in terms of maintenance that way with tomatoes?
Yes, very important. I suppose blight is something that can cause a major crop failure. So what you want to do is eliminate. So with the likes of people recommending application of copper sulfate for blight, what you want to do is prevent the likes of blight. How do you do that? When watering tomatoes, it is so important. Tomatoes do not like to have water at top of the coat. However, there are different crops that do, such as cucumbers. We're talking tomatoes here today. So when you're watering your tomatoes, water the soil, whether they're in a pot and or they're in your glass house or your polytunnel. Something that's so important. If you start to water the leaves, cool it down, some people may recommend, or some people do nonetheless, something that you look at, see the leaves start yellow, start getting a small instances of blight. And if you do get it, first thing I recommend you organically is remove the lower leaves. Remove the leaves that do look infected, and as a result of that, what's a good way of reading a plant is always supposed to be in the row, at the top, is where what is actually happening with the plant right now. What has previously happened down here is the past. So if you had deficiencies in the past, you can then add in, I suppose, what I do for my own plants is a nettle garlic spray at the early stages of development. That would be relatively in the stage of the first life cycle. So the nettle garlic right now will be absolutely fine. As you suppose start to see more flowers, which literally are a little bit taller of the plant here. Here are the first of the flowers that are emerging on this plant. And when you see the flowers, what you want to do is encourage other, suppose, pollinators in your veg patch or your python or greenhouse by borage or calendula are two absolute breadwinners that I do recommend to people to plant in and around. Why? Because you're attracting more bees. And people will tell you a little more, I suppose, about the likes of other plant pollinators. Maybe roses might be a good one. I just see roses here in the background that some people might be able to use and incorporate into their veg patch. But for the most part, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about of watering. Tomatoes actually don't need a whole lot of water. In a pot, they would need more so than like in the ground. Because when they're in the ground, tomatoes have a huge, long root system, and it's something that they search and send out their roots. If anyone is growing or has ever grown tomatoes, you'll know how far when you literally are digging up the plants at the end of the growing season that their roots do go for. So only typically at the start, what you need to is most certainly keep your water at a regular and consistent amount, then tailor it off. But what that actually happens is you put the plant under a little bit of stress. When you put the plant under a tiny bit of stress, it's a fine line that you need to, I suppose, learn. It's like driving a car. I mean, you know how much clutch to give it. You know how much water to give your plants, and it'll be after practicing. You don't get good, I suppose, in just one growing season. The second, followed by the third, the fourth, the fifth time to practice, I suppose, your growing of your different crops. So tomatoes and watering is something that is a bit of a skill in itself.
And a lot of people I know, Colman, will have, particularly later in the season, will be asking about you questions and me questions about tomatoes and the skin of the tomato splitting and what's causing it. That's pretty much often down to watering too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a regular watering, and that's why I suppose when you get further into the nitty-gritty, it's about being consistent. Whatever watering you currently do, be consistent. And that's what gets you any result. Because the point of which, if you give it a load of water at one stage, the fruits start to swell. And then if you give it a little bit less water, what ends up happening is it starts to be opening and closing, I suppose, but like the fruits swelling and constricting itself, nearly ends up in splitting. So there's one of the typical reasons why tomato fruits can split. The next thing is you have different varieties that can and are more, I suppose, prone to splitting. So finding
the happy medium. We've lost Colman there for a minute. We'll come back to him in a sec. A few more questions there that I want to get to. Teresa and Galway, there was a couple of questions in about this actually. So I put a lovely picture of lavender up on the page during the week, and a couple of people have been asking when should they cut back lavender. I think that's the picture here that I put up during the week. There it is. Isn't it gorgeous? Lavender essence purple, really lovely plant, and it's hard to imagine anything as nice as lavender. When lavender is doing so well all on its own, it's just a gorgeous plant. But the trick with it is, of course, is to regularly trim it. So when that lavender that I was showing you there, when the main flush of flowers is finished, which will be in maybe a few weeks' time, well, just trim it back. Go under the flower stems, into the foliage a bit, and trim it back. Keep it, because if it gets woody, and there was another question which came in there a minute ago, and it was about lavender getting woody and when should I cut it back hard. Well, you can't. Don't cut lavender back hard, because if you do that and cut into the woody growth, you lose it. So constantly trim it, regularly trim it. After the flush of flowers, trim it. You'll get another flush, trim it again. Probably about 3 times during the year. I would constantly be trimming back lavender. Why does it get woody in our country? Well, think about it. Where does it come from? It comes from hot, dry Mediterranean and sunny regions, right? We bring it it over here to Ireland. We have it growing in gorgeous pots filled with good quality compost and soil into the garden. As much rain as it could ever have dreamed of, and we're probably feeding it. It just loves it. It outgrows itself. It gets woody, and as I say, once it's got to that stage, it's too late to cut it back. So try and prevent it happening in the first place is what I would say to you there, Teresa, and everybody else who was asking about lavender. Susan Pollock was asking the same question there as well. Colette, I've dealt with your question on the hydrangeas. Colette, Carol Mulcahy was commenting on some lupins, that hers didn't come up this year, and there was a lot of lupin pictures came into the page during the week. That's a particularly nice collage of somebody's lupins that came in during the week, and a few people were saying that their lupins haven't come up, and do you know what, it's, pardon the pun, but it can be a perennial problem in that a lot of people lose lupins, and I don't know, is it just me, or are they becoming more and more short-lived? I remember growing lupins as a small child with my mother, and they'd go on for years and years and years, but maybe years and years and years to a small child. It was only 4 or 5 years, I suppose, and I think that's kind of what we can expect to get out of lupins, is just maybe 4 or 5 years. So I would always be collecting seeds from the lupins. They grow very easily from seed. They won't come true to type. So in other words, if you have a blue lupin or a red and yellow lupin like Manhattan Lights, the seeds won't give you the same colouring, but you'll have great fun finding out what the seeds will come to. So one tip as well when you're planting lupins is leave them slightly proud of the ground. So leave them slightly higher than the soil level so the water doesn't collect and rot the crown of the plant. And another thing is look for good quality lupins. So the West Country Nursery over in the UK, who grow nothing but lupins, their lupins are available here in Ireland as well. West Country hybrids, you'll see them in garden centres all over the country. Look for good quality lupins like that. Expect to pay a couple of euros more, but you'll get plants that will survive for far, far longer. Now, getting back to the other questions. Alison, we did you that. Lil Buckley has one. It's a question that I'm not all that happy to see, and I have a weeping ash tree that is not doing very well. Very little leaves and a lot of dead branches. Is there anything I can do? The reason I'm saying I'm not happy to see it is because I wonder, is it a bit of ash dieback? Unfortunately, it could be. Now, I don't want to panic you, it may not be. But I would probably in this instance get somebody local to you, Lil, a qualified tree surgeon, to diagnose first of all what it is before I start giving you advice without seeing it. So it will be a case, I imagine, of removing a lot of the infected growth, but it may be more than that. So do get a qualified arborist or tree surgeon up to you. Betty is here. Betty Sheedy, I'm encouraging my young grandchildren to garden. I think that's fantastic. What memories they'll have from learning to garden with their grandmother. They have dug and weeded a small patch. Is there anything that they can plant or sow that will appear before they return to school? Betty, in terms of seeds, it's few enough now because we're late. We're in July, and of course they'll be back to school in 2 months. Now, there are some. Nasturtiums will come very, very quickly from seed. You could even try some sweet pea. They may not be in flower by the time they get back to school, but they'd certainly be, growing. Sunflowers, which were all growing throughout the country this year to show solidarity with Ukraine, they'll come from seed, or even little plants which you can get and plant them in the garden. And the great thing about the nasturtiums and the sunflowers is they grow so quickly. It keeps the kids' imagination, it keeps them going. And I see Coleman's back here, so I'm going to ask Coleman, in terms of Betty's question, Coleman, is there anything that you would advise the grandkids to sow that could come good in terms of an edible plant before September, before they go back to school? No, did you hear that?
They say technical difficulties. We made a vacuum. But there's so many different vegetables that you can get your hands on now and to produce a fruit or a vegetable. So tomatoes, if you were able to get your hands on an actual plant, such as that one, that would definitely inevitably have you a harvest of your own homegrown tomatoes, which is I highly recommend. You could definitely grow the likes of your salads. And these are summer salads. These are Lala Rasa that you can get seeds from. Breadwinners that people can certainly grow their own from seed. But again, you can skip a stage if you're, I suppose, maybe a beginner gardener, or if you're looking for, I suppose, a successful crop. Most certainly buying those transplants in a garden centre. But I love getting people showing them how to sow from seed, transplanting stage, and then to the harvest. I suppose it's that whole life cycle and skill in itself.
But it's just, isn't it great, Coleman, just to get the kids interested at such a young age? That's what it's all about, because when you get the bug at that young age, you're going to keep it, aren't you?
Yeah, and that's it. Once they're, I suppose, interested in it, it's something that they can, I suppose, learn and more about. Because for the most part, I didn't have that opportunity. I lived in the country, but I'm extremely into it now because I'm hands-on and practical-based individual, and that's how I learn. A lot of people would gain advantage of maybe a hands-on approach, and that's, I suppose, what I bring to people when I either see them or they growing course here based in Kildare. It's getting them to either bring them and their children to the likes of this event where they're growing salads. I said tomatoes, you could definitely get a tomato plant, and or the likes of your spinach and rainbow chard. But perpetual spinach is the variety of spinach that I do recommend. Why it's a much easier crop to be successful with. It's from the beetroot family, and as a result of that, you get, I suppose, better bang for your buck, taking only the outer leaves, and the kids then gain advantage of iron, vitamin C, and it's such an easy crop. And it's one of those, I suppose, organic fitness foods that I do highly recommend.
You and Popeye, come here. The line isn't great, Colman. I don't know, is it the weather? It could be the weather. So just before I leave you go, you said you have a place on the course tomorrow, haven't you?
Yes, I have one place left on that course if anyone is looking to come, and if they did want to bring anyone else, we will certainly most cater for them. It's based on in Kildare at this moment in time. It starts at 9:30. You go home with, I suppose, the likes of 77 plants on the day, inclusive of one of those tomato plants, so people can, I suppose, harvest their own, as well as finishing at 4:30 with an organic kind of fitness lunch, inclusive of that in the middle of the day. So if anyone is looking for that opportunity, which I suppose is something that's quite unique, and meeting me in person probably is unique in itself, but going to the Kildare tomorrow at 9:30 to 4:30.
And who knows, they might even be able to buy a book when they're there. Keep you on top of the number one list. Colman, thanks as always for joining us. Thanks a million.
So Peter, talk soon. Thank you very much.
Bye. Now I have a question coming in there from Marie. Marie, I have a tree lupine which hasn't flowered, loads and loads of leaf, and it's growing fine but no flower. Well, Marie, when it's a situation like that where you have a healthy plant, in this case your tree lupine, and it's growing fine but it's not flowering, it tends to be lacking potassium or phosphorus. So look for a good quality tomato food. That's again the Nature Safe one. That's the Irish made one with the cold pressed seaweed from Galway, but it's tomato food as opposed to the general fertilizer. That's a very, very good one. So feed something like that with some tomato food, a good quality tomato food, and that'll hopefully promote some flowers. Let me know how you get on with that one. A couple of questions there as well that came in. I put up a short little clip there the other day, was it yesterday or the day before, on just how to cut back an orchid, because people are often asking me, how do I cut back an orchid? So I put up a video on the page during the week, and a couple of questions have come in from that. Marie Keegan is saying to me, Marie Keegan Murphy, I cut the whole flower spike off, will it grow another? And the answer to that one, Marie, when you cut an orchid stem all the way down to ground level, or down to the leaves, as opposed to the node, yes, it will grow another stem. It'll just take that bit longer. It'll take a few months. And on that one, I'm going to leave you now with the video, that little clip. It's only a short clip of how to cut back orchids for anyone who's interested. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I hope we've answered several of your questions, I hope. We'll be back again next Friday as always, 1 o'clock on Ask the Gardener. Get the questions in during the week if you need them. Until then, enjoy the garden. Hopefully by this time next week I'll be talking to you and talking about how we're having such beautiful summer weather, but certainly not at the moment. Now in the meantime, I'm going to get that video and put it up, just how to cut back an orchid. So enjoy it, and we will see you next week. Did you ever wonder what to do with that orchid when it's finished flowering or coming to an end like this? I'm sure you think of little else. Well, instead of throwing it out, don't ever throw it out. Just give it a little prune back, and don't prune the flowering stem completely off. Do you see all these little nodules here? They're little nodes, okay? Now these nodes are the magical part of the plant where new life will come from. And you'll see here already, from this node has emerged a new stem which is going to produce many more flower buds. And these orchids are great because they'll give 4, 5, even 6 months of flower during the year. So quite simply, follow this one where the flowers are all gone, from down to that node, tiny little clip, off it goes, and that will produce new flowers in no time at all. A quick feed with something like a good foliar feed like this emerald mist, and off you go. Leave it there, put it back in a bright sunny position, and in a few short weeks you'll have more orchid blooms all over again.